Hello fellow musicians, my name is Margaret Flood and I'm a clarinet player and a PhD student in music education at the Frost School of Music here at the University of Miami. Today I am going to show you how to properly balance a clarinet reed with materials that you can get from your local hardware store. The materials you will need to produce a better reed are as follows. A glass platelet. Plexiglass will also suffice. You just need a very hard, stable surface in order to hold the reed on it and shave the different areas of it. Next, you will need a piece of finely grit sandpaper. I strongly recommend about 300 grit or higher. The higher you go, the more you'll be able to work into the grains and fibers of the reed. Make sure it's a small enough piece that you can handle it with just one finger and really get in there to a little tiny part and section of the reed. Lastly, you will need the reed itself. This should be a reed that's giving you trouble across some of parts of the registers of the clarinet. You should have actually played on this reed for about a week during your warm-up sessions, maybe throughout long tones and scales. Last, you will need a chart that looks something like this. This chart will allow you to map out what parts of the reed you need to shave down after you go through the testing process. These are the different parts of the reed that you need to know in order to understand where to actually work on the reed. You have the very tip of the reed, you have the rails of the reed, which are each side, and you have the heart of the reed. The heart of the reed is incredibly important because that is the foundation of the reed. The heart of the reed is not to be touched or worked on. So this is how we are going to go through this process. You are going to test each side of the reed by turning the instrument about 40 to 50% one way or the other. So first note we are going to test is our low E. And I'm going to do this twice just to make sure. Both times I felt a little bit more resistance on this side of the reed than I did on this side of the reed. So I'm going to mark that on my chart. This way I know that I need to shave slightly right down here in order to balance both sides of the reed. Next I'm going to test out our C's. This too produced a little bit of resistance on the same side that the E was resistant. Next I will do is the open G. And the open G seems to be fine, working fine for me, so I'm going to leave that alone. Most of the time you will find that the open G doesn't need any work at it whatsoever. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and mark this C and make sure that I shave this whole side of the reed. So now I'm going to just double check and make sure what side of the reed I'm going to work on. As of right now, it's just down this side of the reed. So we're going to avoid the tip of the reed at all costs, and we're only going to sand this area. The way we are going to sand is from the E area up to just before the tip of the reed. I'm going to take my reed off, and it's okay if it's wet. I strongly recommend using wet dry sandpaper. If this is kind of an emergency and you're working on balancing a reed before a concert, it shouldn't be too much of a problem because you are using a finely grit piece of sandpaper. I'm going to take my glass platelet or my flat surface and put the reed and make sure it's flush on it and hold it steady with my thumb. Then I'm going to take my piece of sandpaper and just use one finger in it. And I'm going to work on the right side, which was the imbalanced side. I'm going to start from the bottom at the base of the reed, and I'm going to work my way towards the tip to about this area. I'm only going to do about 4 to 6 strokes. Just like that. Then I'm going to take it off and I'm going to go through a testing process, particularly for the E and the C, but I would also test the G again just to make sure that you didn't happen to take some off of the tip. Starting with low E, I'm going to twist it, and then twist it the other way. And that feels much more balanced already. So now I'm going to go to the C. That's balanced. And then just to double check the G. And that is still balanced and working just fine for me. One other quick tip for when you are twisting, this is just a reminder that the purpose of twisting is to dampen one side of the reed and allow the other side to vibrate, and then vice versa. And that's how you truly get an understanding as to how the reed is actually vibrating all the way down the side. So when we test each area, you have the E that vibrates all the way throughout the reed, you have the C that's more of the middle of the reed, and G to the tip of the reed. So keep that in mind, particularly when talking to students. It might be difficult for them to understand what the purpose is of testing each side in a twisted, awkward manner. Always make sure that they are using a chart to chart out what areas of the reed they need to work on, and not to rush the process. Thank you so much for viewing this today, and just remember, you too can make reeds great again.